What should you do next? Build muscle, maintain your current physique, or cut body fat? Today's episode will give you clarity because you're going to hear a real-time, rapid nutrition assessment call with someone who's made really impressive progress, but now faces that familiar quandary. What is my next phase? We are going to talk about an approach that honors both your aesthetic goals and long-term health, especially bone density. You'll discover why intensity in the gym might matter more than calories, how to break through training plateaus without compromising results, and deal with what feels like competing fitness goals so that you can move forward with confidence. Welcome to Wits and Weights, the show that helps you build a strong, healthy physique using evidence, engineering, and efficiency. I'm your host, Philip Ape, and today we are featuring another recording from a rapid nutrition assessment call with someone who is weighing different options for their next fitness phase. Now, these are just 15-minute calls that I offer for free to help people identify their key roadblocks, create a plan moving forward. It's not a sales pitch. You can use the link in the show notes anytime if you want to schedule one with me. And today's conversation with Sam perfectly captures the struggle that many of us face, wanting to build muscle for health and strength while maintaining a lean physique that we worked hard to achieve. And what makes this really valuable, I think, is that Sam, she has already established some solid nutrition and training habits, yet she still needs guidance on an optimal path forward. We always need support and guidance at these forks in the road. No matter how much knowledge we have, no matter how much we've been there before, I have coaches, I have systems that help me as well. And I feel like these calls will give you a way to do that. So whether you're currently in a similar position as Sam or, you'll be there one day, I think the insights from today's conversation are still going to help you navigate what to do next in your fitness journey with a bit more clarity. Thanks, Sam, for setting this up. I know you've been listening to the podcast a while, so you also have a lot of knowledge and experience. You mentioned that you're looking at counsel on what phase to go into next, right? Should you build? Should you maintain? Should you do fat loss? And let's see, it says here, you've invested time in nutrition and fitness coaching with great results. Give credit for being dialed in the behaviors we care most about. So those would be the big pillars we talk about a lot. And I can make a case for each of the three options. We all can at any given time. Every day, I'm thinking about these three options myself. I'm like, because are you the type of person who just loves to push a little bit and kind of vary things up?
Absolutely. And I love a good project. I love a good self-improvement project. So I nerd out on this stuff. I have really good systems in place. And I frankly do get a little bored and restless. So I probably too often kind of reconsider the plan. Like, oh, does it need tweaking? Does it need tweaking? And a lot of times the answer is just stay the course. But that's sort of what I want to talk about is like, am I just being restless and a little, do I need to just kind of settle in? But I do think it's helpful for me to hear what I'm settling into and kind of for the right reasons. So
yeah. And you hit the nail on the head by saying the right reasons, because usually what I come back to is the front of the loop and the back of the loop. The front of the loop is like envisioning your future self. Why are you doing this? What does it look like? What are you actually trying to achieve? Like, what is the real reason here? The purpose driving you other than short term. Yeah, I like a good project, which is also acceptable. And then knowing that you've been through this before, there's some level of, I'll say, discomfort in change. And so what's going to give you the most momentum toward that goal in the next, say, 6 to 12 months? So what resonates with you there?
I guess I'm torn because one of your first questions always is and ought to be like, what's your goal? What are you working towards? And kind of what's your why for that goal, right? Like fair questions. I think I'm torn because I want to build muscle and I particularly want to get my bone density score higher. I had a recent DEXA scan. This is very much on my mind. So I know what's needed in order to do that. I need to push it in the gym more. Just as some very quick backstory on gym training. So I would say for many, many years, I've always been a very fit and active person, but for many years, kind of in my 20s and 30s, I'm now in my late 40s, I would say my RPE during workouts, bar, cycling, hiking, that kind of stuff. My RPE was always like 3, 4, you know, it's kind of mild to moderate. I would say over the last 2 to 5 years, I've gotten much more comfortable with being in like a 5, 6 zone. And now I know I need to move more into an RPE of like 7, 8, and 9 in the gym, particularly around strength training, if I'm going to move the needle on building muscle. So I've recently started following a program I really like. I don't know if you know Marcus Philly, functional bodybuilding.
Yeah, I don't know that specific one. Continue.
He's great. He's
Yeah.
kind of an ex-CrossFitter who's really come up with a lot more kind of sane approach to weightlifting and a lot of mobility work. So anyway, I really like his program. I'm weightlifting currently 4 times a week, but I know the direction I need to go in has a lot to do with increasing intensity. So like when it comes to the muscle building and the bone density piece, I kind of understand how to do that. I think the part that feels like maybe I'm torn about is I also would like to have lower body fat than I currently do.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the part that I'm just sort of not sure about. I'm currently sitting at 18%. Last year, I had done a fat loss phase and I got down to 14%. I felt amazing. I felt shredded. I felt strong. I liked how I looked in clothes. I felt confident. And that was a very hard place to stay.
Mm-hmm.
In the course of a year, I've put back on 7 pounds, not through being slovenly or not moving. I've been constantly active and training, but I do think my body kind of likes to sit where it always kind of has. And to go down from there requires a caloric restriction, being in a calorie deficit, but it comes with, I think, a pretty good feeling. And that's where I get torn. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you might tell me in order to put on muscle, you've got to go into a build. And I'm kind of sitting here going, I feel really ambivalent about that because I'm already at the top end of my weight range. If I just start kind of increasing calories, even in a slow and steady way, I might feel a lot of discomfort with that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I've said a lot.
No, you said a lot of great things, hit on a lot of really good points. So I took some notes because there's different things we should cover here. Let's start strategic. Let's start high level. When you talk about discomfort and top of your range and all of that, it's very personal, right? Like I always tell people, how do you know you're ready? You just know that you're kind of uncomfortable where you are and you want to go the other direction. Having said that, one question I always like to ask is, have you, besides a 7-pound weight gain, have you ever intentionally tried to build muscle or even been training to build muscle and slowly gained weight besides that?
No, I've never gone into a caloric surplus.
Mm-hmm.
I have only ever been at maintenance and trying to add muscle, or been in a deficit and trying to add muscle.
Okay. And you mentioned that when you got shredded, it was hard to maintain, which means your body's set point might float a little bit higher than that, which is totally normal, especially when you're talking 14%, which when I always subtract 10 to think of a man, it was like 5%. It's very lean. Again, not right or wrong, but it makes a lot of sense. So I would first ask and rule out or accept in, is there a really driving reason to get shredded right now?
No, it's not like, oh, I'm turning 50 and I'm going to be wearing a bathing suit in front of 100 people. Like, absolutely no, none of that. It was just a feeling of confidence that I haven't typically experienced day to day. I really liked how clothes fit. I liked how I felt naked, frankly. Like I just felt strong and confident. So, but no, there's no kind of event. There's no particular anything that's significant.
Okay. So the next thing I want to get to, because I want to come back to the 3 options, maintenance, fat loss, muscle building, is when you talk about training intensity, I like that because sometimes we feel like we have to bring out the intensity or like you said, you're not feeling like you're necessarily training as intensely as you can. And you understand that that's important. How do you know? So this is kind of just putting you on the spot. How do you know you're training intensely or not?
One obvious side effect for me is getting a little sore at times.
Mhm.
I would say when I've been weightlifting before or exercising kind of prior to this year, last year, I didn't experience soreness kind of ever. And now I'm trying to feel it a little bit more the next day as some biofeedback, like, hey, your body responded to what you did yesterday. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is mentally, when I'm choosing a weight, that I'm doubting, can I do that? That's usually an indicator that I'm stepping out of my comfort zone.
Mhm. That's a good one. No, I like that, right? Because sometimes it is about making the attempt regardless. So what I think of when you say you're doing 4 days a week and it's kind of a bodybuilding thing is when I work with a beginner who's never lifted before, for example, we're going to use like a very simple strength-based program. Ideally with barbells if they have it. If not, we can use dumbbells. And I would actually use a program that involves pushing load and only load and not reps or rep ranges, not even rep ranges, right? Sets across, like starting strength, something like that, only because it basically tricks you into getting more intense. Like
Yeah.
involuntarily, it's going to get to a point where the RPE is getting to 6, 7, maybe 8 or even 9. Assuming you don't push, the load too much from one session to the next, because that's one of the variables. And so have you done like a focused just strength training, push the numbers type program?
A little bit. I wouldn't say program, but like, so part of the help and the coaching that I've gotten over the course of the past 18 months was I worked with a trainer so that I could feel what it felt like.
Mhm.
Well, first of all, I wanted to get like really good form, but I also wanted to feel what it felt like to go somewhere I hadn't been before with someone watching because I
That's
was
great.
scared.
Yeah.
It brings up a lot of fear in me to go to like 7, 8, 9. So not a program per se, but I've had some rehearsal with what it feels like to kind of push and get uncomfortable.
Okay. And now this segues then into the phases, because if you're in a fat loss phase, a bodybuilding style program can be great because it's auto regulated, right? Like you can adjust, you can push intensely even if your strength isn't necessarily increasing and hold on to muscle. But
Yeah.
that's the goal, is to hold on to muscle, which it sounds like you've kind of already gone through that. I'm leaning, like, for you, more toward maintenance, recomp, maybe muscle building. I know you came with maybe some preconceived notions, like he's going to tell me to gain. And honestly, I'm not going to force you to do anything, obviously, but
Of course.
where the options are maintenance, right? If your body fat is in what you think of as a healthy range and your training is progressing, that could be a really beneficial place to be, because then you can, I'll say, chase the numbers in the gym. You can chase the progression in the gym as your like metric, and
Yep.
not worry about body weight, anything really. Just, take body measurements once a week, things like that. But you can just focus on the growth and the energy and the performance without pushing yourself to that level of like, my clothes don't fit, discomfort, self-doubt, looking in the mirror, but also not worried about like starving yourself to get to it. I'm not saying that's what you did, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There are
Yep.
sacrifices
Yeah.
in both directions.
Sure.
The pros being the pros of that approach being, you could potentially gain some muscle with minimal fat gain. It's very flexible for your life. You could just live and enjoy the summer, which is coming up, right, without feeling uncomfortable in a bathing suit. If you have the occasional high stress or other demanding things in your life, it's great because you're energized, right?
Yep.
The really only downside is it's going to be a little slower. The visual changes are slower. It requires a little more patience. I like to track even more precisely in maintenance, just because it's, sometimes hard to tell what's going on without doing that. But it's a great place to be. So that's one option. The other option, when we talk about muscle building, is if you're willing to accept a little bit of fat gain, knowing that you can really pack on some more lean tissue, so that later lean phases, you can get, say, shredded at a higher body fat with more food, with higher calories, with less impact to your hormones, less negative biofeedback. It's a short-term kind of trade-off for that, right? Where the benefit that you go after and you focus on is on chasing the strength and size, and size in a good way, right? Because I know some people and women, chide at that thought of bulkiness. You upregulate your metabolism. You potentially eat more food, which helps you develop that skill of doing that in a controlled way. The cons, of course, now you're going to have a little more fat there and maybe psychologically run into some issues. So having said all this, is there a place that you're leaning toward so far, or do we need to drill in a little bit more?
I guess it's one thing I feel a little bit uncertain about. And maybe the whole answer is like I've just never really pushed to a level of intensity where the muscle building is really like alive and well. So I think that like that is a place to really put my focus. Like that is something I can control is like regardless of, we're really only talking about like 50 more calories a week if I do the math kind of the way that I think you counseled prior clients to do, which is not significant at all. But the bigger kind of lever it feels like right now is, okay, really committing to the training.
Yes.
And if I did that at maintenance, just to see like, does that move the needle at all?
Mhm.
And then the hypothesis is that a little bit more food would be the variable that would like move the needle a little bit more. I still don't entirely understand why that's the case. If my protein is really high, which it is right now, and I'm training intensely, like what would just a little bit more food do? Can maybe you address that piece? Because that would help me make sense of like the delta between maintenance and a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the body as a system, and you've got lots of mechanisms going on, like just now sitting there, right? You have so many mechanisms with your hormones, keeping you alive with your organs. Organs actually are very hungry. People don't realize that. And when you're at, let's say you're at true maintenance, exactly the maintenance you need, you have everything required to maintain homeostasis, and that's where your body likes to be. And so if you go into the gym and you hit it hard, your body, let's say, has to hit a decision point. Do I devote some of the resources coming in to build that muscle by sacrificing storage of energy, which is like a survival mechanism, or do I just maintain what's there?
Uh,
And here's the thing: there's a lot of debates today about whether maintenance is really all you need. I think what it comes down to is the experienced folks, the trainers and lifters out there who are talking about this, they really know how to stay on that aggressive side of maintenance, which is kind of like you mentioned 50 calories. Like that's, to me, that's like almost maintenance, right? Like even though you might be more petite at a lighter body weight, that's why your calories are less than like I might need 150 calories. But it puts you in just the slightest of surplus where your body feels safe. Your body feels secure that it has everything it needs, and now it can go out and give you the amino acids, devoted to structural building of the muscles. And it's a fine threshold because if you're not quite at that threshold, it's still like maintenance, and then your body's just kind of floating. And if it's well beyond that, the more you go, the more you're likely to hit that maximum, but then you keep going and you're going to gain more fat, right? That's why we're trying to find that spot. So
right.
I don't know if that explained it for you. It's,
Yeah.
I guess, not well understood as the exact mechanisms why.
Yeah. No, but I kind of think about it almost from like a resources perspective that like when resources are scarce, obviously your body is going to try to hold on to it. When resources are just plentiful enough, you're going to kind of stay as things are, but you kind of have to move into like a little bit more of this surplus for your body to be able to release and like to kind of change its focus somehow.
It's a prioritization. And also because you're leaner, you don't have excess energy. And so your body, like the hormonal signaling is even more airs on the side of homeostasis of holding on to that energy. So it's kind of like a slight disadvantage that leaner folks have, right? If you were overweight or even just had a little bit of extra fat, your body would perceive maintenance as still potentially a surplus because of the extra fat storage.
Uh-huh.
It's all just a net energy system to think of it that way. So that's why I do like for you, since you basically laid out your thoughts, an aggressive maintenance, which would be like a lean gain of like 0.15% body weight a week, let's say, around that range, which would gain very little scale weight over a meaningful period. Like you could do it for 6 to 9 months and you're not talking about a lot of pounds.
Yeah.
Right. But you give your body the best chance to build. And what's neat about that too, Sam, is even though, how do I put this? There's a chance for some recomp as well while you're doing that. Right. Meaning because you're in that safety point, your body might then release some more fat anyway, as part of that process. So kind of interesting place to be.
Yeah. Okay. And then just last question, in terms of like knowing I'm really at maintenance, I'm looking at my trend weight. And so over the course of from Jan 1 to now, it has fluctuated within 4 pounds. So some weeks it's up, some weeks it's down. The weeks it's down, it's often deliberate. It's not accidental. I'm like, ooh, I didn't like the spike from a couple weeks ago. Let me kind of pull my calories down a bit. But within a 4 pound range, do we tend to think of maintenance as a range, or do we tend to think of maintenance as like within a pound, like a very kind of tidy little unit?
No, the former. Yeah, the former. 2 or 3 pounds plus or minus is a good, the lighter you are, the smaller the absolute number. But like for most people, it's like 2 to 3 pounds in either direction. So you're talking about like a 6 pound swing. So you've been in maintenance. That's what I would say. If I saw your purple graph, it'd be like kind of right in that window, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in which case, then dedicated lean gain should see a very slight drift upward over time,
Okay.
So here's an interesting, since you've never done this on purpose, one of the challenges you might run into is your metabolism responds upward and you fall behind and you're actually no longer in aggressive maintenance. And so you kind of have to get it and look at your expenditure and see how it's trending. If it starts to take off like really steeply, I would usually advise getting ahead of that by eating more, just to kind of avoid a plateau, because the plateau is just kind of wasting time, if you will, at maintenance. And then the training side, this is really up to you, but if you've never done like a super meaningful strength training focus, I would bias your program toward that, where you have either full on main lift focus or a hybrid, like what they'd call power building, which is main lifts with some bodybuilding, but like focused on the heavier side, especially when your concern is bone density.
You're saying versus hypertrophy.
Versus just hypertrophy or just like 8 to 12 rep range type stuff. Not to say, you probably have heard the science by now. There's a lot of flex in all of that.
Sure.
And you could have a hypertrophy bias in a strength program. For example, you might have one lift that's a main lift and you do it in like an 8 to 12 rep range, but then you'll progress over time to like a lower rep range as it gets heavier and it becomes strength, but then it cycles back to the higher rep range as it gets heavy. Okay. You can do more of a power building, which is like, I'm going to do a main lift heavy. I'm going to do a support main lift or developmental lift. So you might do like a squat and then a sumo deadlift and then 2 or 3 bodybuilding style, right? Okay.
Gotcha.
Or you could do just straight up strength where it's like, I'm going to do 3 or 4 main lifts and variants of main lifts, all compound lifts. I'll do a squat, I'll do a sumo, I'll do an RDL, maybe one bodybuilding support thing and call it a day, but like they're all pretty heavy, right?
Uh-huh.
Do you have a trainer that's giving you a program now, or what are you following?
No, I bought Marcus Phillips' program. And so I'm following it. I move every day of the week, but I'm weightlifting 4 days. Mm-hmm. It does tend to be the higher rep range stuff, which I was thinking about more like from an aesthetic perspective, looking like I lift, which is always like a fantasy. But you're saying from a bone density perspective, especially thinking about going heavier and not being as hemmed in by those higher reps.
Yeah, it's mainly for that, because your strength and function and bone density is all, I think that's like priority number 1. Did you listen to my recent episode, Strength versus Hypertrophy?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe re-listen to that, because then you kind of hear the logic and the progression of it. Okay. Yeah. Re-listen to that one. It all works, I'll say, but I like efficiency,
Yeah, me too.
If you can get super strong, it can then translate to having more confidence and higher lifts with your hypertrophy work. Also, doing it that way gives you even more idea of intensity and training close to failure. Because when it's 5 reps for 3 sets and you can only do 5 reps, you're up there like RPE 8 maybe, and you feel it and you know what it's like. But it also won't necessarily make you sore, but for the first time you do it, right? Because the body adapts quickly, and maybe learning to not necessarily chase soreness, but really chase growth is the way to go. Anyway, I think you have a good plan. Aggressive maintenance, strength focus. Obviously, if you need specific resources, I've got plenty. I can send you some of our workout programs or point you to some trainers that I like for that. And then since you're already using MacroFactor, you know how to set that up. So I think you're golden. What do you think?
I feel great. I'm just basically listening to your podcasts as like a little coach in my ear and trying to make adjustments, kind of based on what I'm hearing and learning all the time. So I'm going to try this out, and I might come back to you at some point and just sort of say, I think I'm ready to do more of a build, but I'd like to kind of partner and have somebody helping me do that, just because that every time, it's like the first time you do anything, sometimes it's helpful to have a coach.
100%. There's so many things you don't know.
Exactly.
That's the way I like to put it.
Exactly.
So now you're playing offense. Now you've got some good data to get started. I'm really excited for you because you've got so much like potential there. I just know it. I can feel it. You have a great attitude, and I think you're committed and you're going to make it happen. So awesome, Sam.
Okay. Awesome, Phil. Thank you. I so appreciate your time.
Thanks so much. You know how to reach me, and have a great day. Enjoy your time in New York, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Take it easy. All right. And that was my recording with Sam. And if you found value in that, if you want your own personalized guidance like Sam received for your situation, I invite you to go ahead and book your own free 15-minute rapid nutrition assessment with me. Don't be shy. I'm a nice guy. I'll make you feel at ease. It is not a sales pitch. Basically, it's us talking about the thing holding you back right now, whether it's nutrition, what to do next, your training, really anything, and give you some targeted, actionable steps in a fast-paced 15 minutes. So to schedule it, use the link in the show notes or go to witsandweights.com and click the button at the top. Again, no sales pitch, just some guidance from me to you to help you achieve your goals more efficiently. All right, so as we wrap up, I think the most exciting thing about my conversation with Sam, and hopefully you got that as well, is just focusing on the fundamentals, the pillars, right? Progressive overload, proper nutrition, consistency with your habits. You're going to transform yourself without anything radical. You just need to know a direction and then a consistent plan to get there, knowing there will be deviations along the way, and that's totally okay. Your metabolism is very adaptable. You're very adaptable. So get on that and also schedule your call if you think it'll be helpful. Until next time, keep using your wits, lifting those weights, and remember that the most powerful fitness tool, it's not in a supplement, it's not in the latest YouTube workout program. It is the intelligent application of effort where it matters most. I'll talk to you next time here on the Wits and Weights podcast.